Author of the story, Anatoliy Kavun. Story, Talking to God. Enjoy listening. He had been standing in front of the cathedral for probably a couple of hours now. In all his long life, walking and driving past it many times, he never once dared to go inside. On the contrary, he would quicken his pace and try to run away from the thoughts that often haunted him. Until this day. And today, when the last passers-by were hurrying home and rare cars were driving by, he stood there, looking. And this time, he wasn't ready to leave. He stood immersed in his memories, as if he were waiting for something. Many years ago, when he was little, his mother brought him to the cathedral. She said that it was a place where people could talk to God, tell about their troubles, and find answers to questions that tormented them. She said that in these walls, everyone could find themselves, but they had to believe. And also, that children could ask for something impossible, and if the child was sincere and pure, the wish could come true. How long ago was that? Then he stood next to his mother, and like a child thought aloud that he would always be a child, that his mother and the whole family would be by his side. And he also made a wish that his sister, who was seriously ill, would recover and be able to play with him again. They left the cathedral, and his mother looked at him with eyes full of love, smiled, and said that someday, when he was ready, he would come back here again, and she would be waiting for him in this very place. He did not yet know how much of it was not meant to come true. He kept her words in his heart all his life, and a few days later, war came to his country. His home was destroyed by a missile hit, just like many other homes throughout his country. He remembered lying for several days amidst the rubble. Only the sunlight breaking through the cracks suggested that he was still alive. He heard the yelp of the puppy that he was given as a birthday present the day before, which fell silent on the second day. He remembered how, among the collapsed walls, he saw his sister's broken crib and a piece of her colorful dress sticking out from under a concrete slab. All his life, he wanted, but could not remember his mother's face. The terrible sight of her broken arm among the rubble overshadowed all other memories of her. Rescuers found him on the third day, but he regretted that rescue his whole life. He dreamed of going back and dying with them. He was taken to an orphanage, but he ran away. And he ran away every time, wherever he ended up and whoever took him in, until he grew up, until they stopped looking for him, finding him, and returning him. He had absolutely nothing to remember from those wartime and post-war years. Years passed, and he grew up. But he couldn't find the strength to start a family. He was very afraid of letting love into his heart, because his wild fear of losing everything again was endless and all-consuming. He worked a lot, became successful, but always remained lonely. And his only and most important consolation was helping others. To help those who, like him, once lost their loved ones, hope, strength, and health in the war. Those who carried a crippled soul out of those years, and in whom the joy of life was lost forever. For decades, as he saved others, he held on to the desire to live, while another part of him always remained in the past. Now, standing in front of the cathedral, he realized that he was completely tired. Tired of fear, tired of despair, tired of the same nightmare he had seen every day for over 70 years. Tired of living. The part of him that always made him go forward gave up. In front of the cathedral, inside the old man's body, stood the grief-stricken boy from his past, who had been hiding in the depths of his consciousness all his life. He stood there and waited. He did not know how to pray, but his heart called out to her. For back then, in his childhood, she promised that when he was ready, she would be waiting for him. He stood and waited, and she came. At first, he felt a touch on his hand, and then she took his hand and stood next to him. He was afraid to turn his head, afraid that she would disappear again, and that it was just a delusion. So they stood together for some time. She did not rush him. She simply waited and held his hand. And he needed nothing else. She was waiting, and he took the first step, then the second, then the third, making steps toward the cathedral. He was both the happy, full-of-life boy who walked alongside his mother in his childhood, and the old man who came to ask a question but was afraid to go in by himself. He held her hand, and she helped him take step by step. His whole life, there was no one beside him with whom he could grow old. There was no one who could help him cope with grief. And now, going forward, he didn't even notice how old he had become. But her hand gave him the strength that he had unknowingly lost in recent years. She entered the cathedral with him, and then let go of his hand, and he understood that he had to go further on his own. And he went, afraid to turn around and see that he was still alone, just like before. He was standing, not in the middle of the great cathedral, but in the middle of his own closed world. And in that world of his, the boy from the past, lying crushed beneath the ruins of a destroyed building, kept asking the same question. What for? Did he expect an answer? No. He had not found that answer within himself throughout his entire life, and he knew he would not find it now. The city around him fell asleep and sank into silence. But he no longer wanted to sleep. His dream, his nightmare, that had haunted him all his life and began every time he closed his eyes, was ending today. He stood in the middle of the cathedral and remained silent, and only the tears on his face spoke for him. All he wanted now and always was to be a child again, to live a happy life, a different life, the one he never had. And he also wanted to see his family again, to hold his mother close, to embrace his father and to look into his sister's eyes. But there was so much he did not know, he never thought about, how much he had done for others in his life, how many lives he saved, how many families he helped find, and how many people he helped begin living again. He never understood that although he himself refused to accept love, he was able to help others find it again. They were all infinitely grateful to him, but he never accepted their love. His heart closed forever the day the rocket hit their home. Standing there now, he unexpectedly remembered every single person he had helped. For the first time, he saw their eyes, the way they had always looked at him, eyes full of gratitude for everything he had done for them. If his hardened heart could still feel love, he would have been shocked to know how many people considered him their second father. Many of them lived in the same city, and many had scattered all around the world. And in that moment, his connection with all of them suddenly became incredibly strong. All those people were sleeping somewhere in their homes, but every one of them was beside him now. They came to support him one last time and to say thank you. And although he could no longer stand on his own, they, filling the entire cathedral, stood beside him, supporting him, and it seemed as though all of them together were waiting for something. Life was leaving him, but he was not tired of life. He was tired of a dream that was never meant to come true, and of the pain he had carried within himself all these years. And when his question stopped echoing in his mind, and his heart almost stopped beating, he saw them, those whom he knew he would never see again, those in memory of whom he never gave up for so many years, and for the sake of whom he saved other lives. They stood before him as if woven from light, ethereal, impossible, yet infinitely real. Mom and Dad. And between them, holding their hands, stood his little sister. Slowly, they walked toward him. Mom embraced him tightly, kissed him, and whispered that she loved him very much, and that she always knew he would come. Dad simply held him close, the way only he could, and looked at him with the same eyes from his childhood, eyes filled with love and warmth. He had missed that look so much. And his little sister ran up to him, pulling at his trousers and pushing against him, just like she used to do as a child. He knelt down in front of her, and she, just like in childhood, placed her little hands on his cheeks and smiled. Looking at all of them for the first time in his life, he understood that happiness had returned to him, even if it came so late. He looked at them and said that he was ready, and asked them to take him with them. But his sister smiled at him once more, wrapped her arms around his neck, and held him tightly. Then she pulled back, kissed him on the cheek, and gently shook her head, as if refusing him something. His gaze faded, and all the figures standing around him turned into billions of glowing sparks, which dissolved into the light of the coming morning. They continued on their journey, but his journey was not over yet. He came to talk to God, but instead he met the people who had loved him all his life, and he was finally able to say goodbye to those whom he himself loved endlessly. All his life he had hidden deep inside his wounded soul while giving the world his enormous heart. Early in the morning, a young family entered the cathedral, mother, father, and their little daughter, who was only beginning to walk. In the middle of the cathedral floor, they saw a little boy. He was sleeping beneath the rays of the morning sun, shining through the stained glass windows. There was a happy smile on his face, the kind of smile only children can have in their dreams. The little girl let go of her parents' hands and clumsily toddled toward him. She squatted beside him, placed both hands on his cheeks, and smiled. He opened his eyes and saw his sister, whom he had lost many years ago, and his new family. She smiled and hugged him. Looking upward, he barely whispered one word. "Thank you." He embraced her, and after a few seconds, only deep within his childlike eyes could one still glimpse the soul of that old man. His journey and his enormous heart had brought his sister back to him and given him a second life, and the family he had dreamed of for so long. If he had listened closely, he might still have heard his mother's quiet voice. "I love you, and I will wait for you in that very place when you are ready." But he could no longer hear them. He had become a child again, and ahead of him was a long and happy life, in a world where no more children's lives would ever be destroyed by war. He came to talk to God. You have just listened to the story, Talking to God, written by Anatoliy Kavun. Thank you for listening. Until next time.